One of the biggest challenges for businesses today and over the next 10 years is Generation Z. I know every once in a while we're talking about millennials and then Gen Y, but Gen Z is completely different. They have lived with technology. They are so adept at technology, and they're also moving into the workforce with a sense that, well, if I don't like the job, I can start my own company. Completely different. So, how do businesses attract these individuals? What do we need to offer them to make sure they want to work for us and stay with us? And then, more importantly, how do businesses market to them, get their attention? Where do they consume content? What matters to them in order for them to buy or at least keep our products and services in their consideration set? Well, I brought Mark Beal. He is a professor of practice and public relations at Rutgers School of Communication and Business. I know it's a big title, but boy, does he break this down for you in common sense terms. He's written a bunch of books about this topic, and more importantly, he has a great petri dish of students, meaning he has them right there, and he asks them the questions and finds out in real time so he can share his strategies and tactics that he shares with big corporations and sports teams on how to attract Gen Z. Well, we brought that to you today. So let's dive into our interview with Mark Beal. Okay, Mark. So as an expert on Gen Z, let's just dive right into it. Let's just, call it right out. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about Gen Z when they start labeling them? What are the things they get wrong?
Yeah, well, Gen Z, I love how you're setting it up there. Gen Z, just so everyone knows, officially according to Pew, born starting in 1997 through approximately 2012. So our Gen Zers are just graduating college. They're in college, they're in high school, they're in middle school, they're in elementary school. And I think the biggest misconception is, they're always on their phones. They're always fooling around on their phones, right? Well, no, actually, they are conducting business on those phones. They're actually launching companies on those phones. They are connecting on those phones. So I think that's probably the biggest one is, always on their phones. They don't have their eyes up. They're not socializing. It's just a different way of, again, conducting business, socializing, going to school, all those things. And as the CMO of MTV said, and I always deliver this slide in the first, my keynote is they're the first generation that learned to swipe before they could wipe. And that's really what it's all about, right? Is they've had this technology in their hands since 1, 2, 3, and 4, very comfortable with technology, very comfortable socializing, conducting business, all those. So I think that's probably the biggest one is just, no, they're not simply, having fun on the phone. They're accomplishing some pretty interesting things, including a lot of startups, a lot of nonprofit organizations that they're launching.
Yeah, that's interesting because I have two boys and one is 16, the other's 14, and they are on their phones, but that's the way, as you said, they consume content. Very similar to when we were growing up, we were in front of a TV. Now, it wasn't this close, but we were still on TV, watching TV. And how often did our parents say, get out of the house, go get away from that TV and go play? So very similar. We do forget quite often, but they're also the ability, which I think we miss, is their ability to self-select the content to see what they want to engage in versus we have to watch this because either this is the show our parents wanted to watch or this is the only show that's on right now. So if that's a misconception, these, as you said, they're graduating college. The first ones are getting out into the workplace. So businesses, if there's this misconception with this group of individuals as they're on their phones or they're disconnected or they're unlike us, which is what we'll keep it very broad. What are the things that businesses need to understand and or do in order to find these really motivated individuals and attract them to their business?
Well, what's interesting is the first point I'll bring up has nothing to do with technology of the phone, which is interesting, but I conduct quarterly surveys of Generation Z, and I ask that same question. What's most important to you in a future employer? What qualities, what characteristics? And consistently, every time, at about 37, 38%,
Mhm.
I'm looking to join a corporate culture of diversity, inclusion, and I like to add the B word, belonging. I want to go somewhere where I feel like I belong. I want to go somewhere where there's diversity of thought, diversity of experience. And I do believe that if they go there and they thought that existed and it doesn't, I think they'll leave sooner than later.
Right.
So interestingly, that first kind of element that I think is most important, based on them coming back to me and saying it's more important than competitive salary, more important than competitive benefits, more important than WFA, working from anywhere. That doesn't really have anything to do with technology. It actually has to do more with what I call HI, human interaction. And
Right.
so it's contradictory to what I just talked about. But if I was a employer, a recruiter, and especially, of course, once they're there and you want to retain them,
Mhm.
especially in a job market right now where everyone seems to be hiring, that's a really, really important element that is, again, not so tech driven, but more about them being the most diverse generation ever, the most inclusive generation ever. And something that kind of ties to that is they wear it proudly. They like to call themselves the purpose generation. And
Right.
they want to work for companies, support brands that demonstrate a higher purpose than just making money. And so that kind of ties into it as well. As I want to work someplace where I feel like I'm also helping build a better community, a better society, a better world, in addition to the work that I do.
Right. And it's interesting because I've consulted with companies and talk with them about um, the disconnect between management at times and the employee base. I remember there was a survey, and I've used it as well, where someone would say, okay, list the top 4 things that you as the manager think is important to your employees. And the first one is always money. Hands down, they think that's the most important. Ask the employees, it was number 4, number 5. They definitely want the money,
Sure.
but they're looking for a career path.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for a company that has a great work environment, and this is not just now. The funny thing is, this
Yeah.
is a survey from 15, 20, 25 years ago. So it hasn't really changed. I just think that, to your point, is that there's been so many other things going on with this just the world at large,
Sure.
with diversity, with new opportunities. I just think, to your point, it's even more important. So let me ask you, if you were consulting with a company, I know you go speak,
Sure.
one, you have the perfect pool because as a professor in college at
Yeah.
Rutgers, you have this, you have your own petri dish of
That's
students
right.
and you can get tactical. But if you were consulting and you go speak at corporations to answer these questions,
Sure.
how much do they need to advertise that? Is that something that has to be found on their website, in their communication, as you said, through the recruiter, of not just here's the job, but here's who we are? So why work for us is more important than just the salary?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I believe, as you said, with this generation especially, but I think we're seeing it with other generations. They are, one, conducting their homework. They are looking for these key characteristics and qualities beyond the salary, as you said.
Mhm.
Um, and they're looking for that in a number of places. Sure, they're looking for it on the company's website, but has this company won or been nominated for a best company to work for? Has this company
Mhm.
been nominated or won a great company for women to work for, or
Right.
a diverse and inclusive? So yes, I believe they're looking for all those things, and a company, obviously, on their own media channels can promote as much as possible. But also, that third-party endorsement is pretty powerful too. When Forbes or Fortune or Fast Company, or and again, not every company's of that size, but when other organizations are saying this is a great company to work for, this is a great company for diversity, inclusion, and belonging, all those kinds of things.
And that's an interesting topic, the diversity inclusion,
Yeah.
because my company, when we have all of our faces on our webpage, we're over half of it is women, not on purpose, meaning I didn't consciously say you have to balance. I just hire talented people. But the interesting thing is, when I was on a forum and they were talking about different races and ethnicities, and I said, I have a hard time. People don't apply. And part of it was us learning where those people are, meaning there are a lot of different places where you can go make sure your job is known, right? So if you're looking and wanting as a business to be diverse, you have diversity and inclusion or whatever, you just can't say, well, I just put my ad on Indeed and they're going to come. There are other areas that you need to go out and do a little outreach if that's your purpose, because I think to your point, these young individuals, it's doing them a disservice to just broad brush they're all X, because within every subset, I always joke, they go, oh, those kids are lazy. I said, I know 50-year-olds who are lazy, right? So it doesn't really matter. So on this road now, so we've hired them, we've got them in here.
Sure.
What are you seeing, or what are you recommending to businesses in this idea of retention, or how do you get them in? Once you got them in and they're excited, how do you keep them?
Yeah, and there's a couple things that come to mind again, aside from salary, aside from promotion at this point. A lot of Gen Zers will talk about the idea, I would love to go work someplace where I, have a mentor, not just a manager. And
Right.
as well as anyone, the nuance there, right? But a place where I'm going to go and I feel like, this employer is a partner with me in helping me evolve as a professional, help me
Right.
advance. So they really feel like, again, it's a team and we're in this together, and I'm not just a cog in the machine and those kinds of things. So that idea of mentor versus manager, the idea of my career development, they truly are, they care about me. They want to see me succeed. They want to help me. And I do think that ladders down to things that are very important, but things like, how often does this organization conduct reviews, once, twice a year? Is there a formal process in place for consideration for promotion, all those things? So I think they're looking for all those things for sure. But I think to your point, they want to feel like, wow, I am included here. I feel like I belong. And this company's, this organization is giving me chances to learn, to grow, to go to conferences, to empower myself to get to the next level. And I think that's really important.
That's interesting. And I was having a conversation this morning with someone I think it was on Clubhouse, we were talking, and someone said that. They said people aren't looking for managers, they're looking for mentors. And because the conversation was talking about onboarding and training and what's the responsibility of the company. And there was someone who made a comment and said, well, I'm looking for the go-getter, so I'll test them. I'll put something out there, but they got to come remind me. And I said, why would you do that? That's in my mind, that was such a old fashioned way of thinking versus setting them up, giving them homework, giving them goals, giving them milestones. Now, if they don't achieve them, you'll know they're not a go-getter. If they achieve them, that's fantastic. But the days of playing games, I don't know if it's because this generation heard their parents being frustrated with the games that were being played at business or their companies, and they're going, I don't want that. Or the idea of, as you said, being stuck, or I'm frustrated, I have to figure it out myself. I think that I really agree with you. I think that whole mentor guiding people. Let me ask your opinion on this, though, because there is some of the pushback that says, okay, well, if I tell this Gen Z, a new employee, whatever age, okay, well, here's where where your job starts, but here's where it could go, and there's where it's going to go. And their frustration is nobody wants to do that first thing. They get their eyes so enticed on where the next step is. So some of them are going, well, where's the line of saying you have a growth plan versus I need you to just master this job first? Is there a way to balance that?
Yeah, it's funny. So I've had dozens and dozens of students from the class of 21 who just graduated and who I've helped in the process secure their first job. And they've all started within the last week or two or three. And I've told everyone the same thing separately, of course, but I said, very simple. Once you get settled in a week or two or three or four, try to see if you can identify a mentor, someone who's was in your position exactly maybe 2 to 3 to 4 years ago. So like a peer-to-peer mentor, as opposed to the CEO or someone like that. And then I said, if you can, and you're not going to find that person on day one or day two, but it may take a little while. But once you do, maybe with them, but also, of course, your manager, create and develop those SMART goals so that you can, again, have alignment with your mentor, your manager, both. And I'm distinguishing those two too, because I actually like a mentor who doesn't work with you day to day, because they can kind of bring a different perception to it, where the manager is kind of in the trenches every day with you, and you've really got this
Right.
working relationship. But if you can establish those kind of 90-day, 6-month, 12-month SMART goals, SMART objectives, then at least, in this role you're in now, these are the things we're looking for you to achieve and accomplish as a way to potentially advance down the road. So I think it's important. I do worry when someone joins an organization out of college and they're just kind of there, but there's no structure. And I know that's few and far between, but I've heard a few stories where it's just, I don't even know,
I don't
we're
think
not getting reviewed,
I don't think it's as few and far between as you think it is. That's my frustration, is when I go in and talk with companies, that's the first thing I'll ask them. Is it written down? Do you have a written plan? Do you have an idea of what's, and I think we're in a transition, part because maybe not Gen Z, but let's go one generation or two generations back. The people who were in their 30s, 40s, they were in that transition of the people who are older, my age, were just sort of thrown to the fire and figure it out. And we didn't like that. And so we stumbled through it trying to find that balance of, well, how much can I mentor you or coach you or develop you? But I have to do my own job. To now, I think more companies they're still trying to figure it out. But there are still a lot of companies that do a great job onboarding, and then it fades.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, is these individuals are looking for coaching, part because that's what they've gotten their whole lives. Very involved parents, very involved, and they've been in sports and all of these clubs, and there's always something going on with some sort of coach pushing them. And then all of a sudden they get to work and they're going, figure it out yourself. I think that's a huge danger for companies. I think they're going to miss out, and then you potentially lose some of these very talented individuals because, to your point, they were looking for that and you didn't provide it.
Yeah, you bring up a great point on the generations, and I can say that because I think I'm a Gen Xer like you. We just kind of were thrown in the fire, just get it done, right? Just get it done. And I do believe that then that evolved. And as you said, I think millennials brought a lot of good things. I mean, I don't think anyone really started talking about things like work-life balance until millennials got to the workforce. And they started bringing those things in, and we started seeing some shifts around that. And now, Gen Z is here, and work-life balance now I think is much more of a focus, PTO days. Even I've had a number of my students who were just hired in the last few weeks, and I said, "Oh, I'm just curious. Are there other benefits they're offering you to recruit you aside from the pay and the benefits?" And there was more than one who said, "Actually, yeah, quarterly mental health days. Never, I'd never heard that before. And every quarter, if I need a mental health day, just take it." So that didn't exist 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago. So there is an evolution going on.
Yeah. And I think I have a lot of my staff they're in their 20s, early 30s. And we never called it a mental health day, but pre-pandemic, we would just tell people you can work from home. Don't even have to give me a reason, just do your work from home. If you just need, and we told people, please take your days off. That was a very big thing. I said, I need you fresh. I don't need you working 24/7. I think the other thing, and you mentioned it in your very first response, this idea that a lot of this younger generation feels that, well, I'll just go build a business myself. For me at my age, you looked at people who started their own business or were working for themselves, not in a negative way, but there was that thing of saying, oh, you couldn't get a job at AT&T, or you couldn't get a job at Lockheed or wherever it was. So, you started your own business, where now entrepreneurship is almost cool. And even people who aren't built for it are doing it, but there is that. And you said that. So when you're looking at your students, over these past few years, talk to me about that idea of I can build a business. I'm starting businesses. We'll figure it out ourselves.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Through all my research, I try to create like personas around Gen Z, and I try to create distinct ones, but they kept coming back to kind of a mixture of 5 or so personas. Number one, and in fact, in my most recent survey, when I surveyed Gen Zs on these 5 personas, the one that number one clearly we do believe we're entrepreneurs. We've got an entrepreneurial mindset. We've got an entrepreneurial spirit. And to your point, I've heard more graduates in the last year or two or three who did not say, I'm taking the traditional route. They said, I've actually got a pretty good idea for a startup company. I've even heard as many say, I've got an idea for a nonprofit that I'm actually going to put all my passion and interest into, and I'm going to start a nonprofit. So didn't hear a lot of that, as much of that a decade ago, but I hear it regularly now, where they are, they've just got that entrepreneurial mindset, the entrepreneurial spirit. They've got an idea and they want to pursue it. And there's more doing that than not, and taking that route where they truly believe they can do it. And I also think they feel like, now is my time to try it. Now's my time to attempt it. And if it fails in a year or two, well, then I will go, seek a job somewhere. But they are incredible entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and they're teaching that in class. My son, when he took his marketing class as a sophomore this year, part of theirs was build a business, start a business, build an online business, or if you're going to have it, how would you market it? And so this idea of leveraging social media, and I think a lot of people see that with however much you want to believe what you see, but still you take it with a grain of salt. But you have a lot of influencers. You see a lot of these people who follow some of these big marketing influencers who are talking about the whole idea of garage sale and flipping, and you can make a business. And all of a sudden I'm going to start my own clothing line and sell it online, where before, that idea of the middleman or someone who I have to go to who's going to hold the keys, that's gone. The market's going to tell you if you have a good idea. So I think they're so exposed to all of that, and it looks easy. Of course, there's more to it, but that barrier of a mental block to say I can't seems to be gone for a lot of them. Where
and I think you raised a couple of great points. One, a lot of these platforms didn't exist 10 plus years ago, right? Platforms where I can, sell, trade, buy, whatever you want to call it. They exist. And it goes back to that point of this generation's very comfortable with technology, new platforms, new apps. And so they welcome that. And if they feel it's the right, quick story, sophomore in high school, when I was writing my latest book, Engaging Gen Z, she just told me a story. She goes, I make this jewelry. I now sell it globally because I found a platform where I can go on there and sell to people in Europe and South America. 16-year-old in high school. You couldn't do that 10 years ago. One, the platforms did not exist. But to your point, that's the mindset.
And the barriers are down where someone can reach out. Like, people are accessible now that would never be accessible to you before. They're willing to reach out if you have an idea, and someone will reach out. So some of the educators or people who are practitioners are very available. And you said it again very early on in our conversation, this idea of using this technology to communicate. When we were young, you had to wait for the phone, or you had to go over someone's house to talk to them. My son plays video games with his friends, but they're also having conversations and they're strategizing. And you could do that, have a conversation with somebody who has similar mindset, and they're in another state, and you're collaborating. All of a sudden you're collaborating. And to your point is, I have a great idea. I post it. Someone sees the picture in a foreign country and goes, how do I buy that? That didn't exist. And so that idea of leveraging the technology, or really using this younger generation, to your point, who's never not had this technology, they're the ones that businesses should be leaning on to say, how do we use this to get our product out? How do we get our message out? And they're going, oh, here, let me show you.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And I bring that example up a lot. I always talk about Target, because Target back in 17 and 18, before most folks were even discussing Gen Z, they created the first ever Gen Z incubator, Gen Zers across the country. They brought them into the boardroom, and they still do it now in 21, and they're going to keep doing it in 22. But it was all about that. It was about everything from web design of our website, making it more user-friendly, our content, our campaigns, our causes, our products. And they've always collaborated with Gen Z since 17, 18, 19 on those things. And I tell companies all the time, I say, take a page out of Target, create your own Gen Z incubator, your own Gen Z think tank, engage local college and high school students. You will be amazed and inspired at what comes out of it. And there will be some pretty special things that do come out of it, including potentially new revenue streams, new businesses, new products.
Yeah. And that's a great point. I tell my own clients, we'll do marketing for them and we'll help them with their, say, website design, and we'll make suggestions. And sometimes they'll say, well, I said, well, you're looking at it every day. It's yours. You stop seeing it. I said, go give someone that you trust that's not in your business, tell them to go shop on your website, or tell them, just go to your website and tell me why I should buy from you. We all get blinded by that. So having that group, that's a phenomenal idea. Having that group of individuals come in. So then let's pivot a little bit, because so we have these folks, right? So they're working for us. Let's flip it. Companies are out marketing to them. They're becoming the next round, right? So even if you say Gen Z and whatever was before Y, it's changing. Where they consume content is changing. What content is exciting to them, the speed of the content, what catch it. So when companies are coming to you and say, okay, you know these folks, Mark, how do we market to them? How do we grab their attention? What are some of the...
So I hit them. There's, few common themes I share. And one goes back to the point we just made. First thing I say is, if you don't have it now, create a Gen Z think tank incubator, call it whatever you want to call it. Converse now has it. Target has it. The National Hockey League has it. Goes back to your point. I love that you said it this way, because it's the same way I said it. I present a lot to professional sports leagues and teams. And when I tell them, and I bring up this idea of a Gen Z think tank, I say, every day you've walked into your stadium, your venue, your arena for the past 5-6 years, however long you've worked there, you do become blind and deaf, just what's there and all the cool stuff. Right. You give 10 Gen Zers the chance to walk into your arena, they will be live streaming it, shooting it, sending it out, because to them it is access and it is cool and it is different. But when you've worked somewhere and you go into the same building day in and day out, you kind of don't realize that anymore. So that's one thing. The second thing I always highlight, which we talked about a little bit, and you dropped a few of the platforms already in some of the remarks, you've got to go to where they're consuming content. And again, I know it's obvious, but they're not watching Morning America, the Today Show. They're not watching the 6 o'clock news, but they are hanging out in larger numbers on Clubhouse. They are on Discord, which brands are not taking advantage of, and they will be over the next year or two. They are on, as you just said with your son, they're hanging out more on Twitch. And Twitch is now not just a video gaming platform, but it's a place where brands like even Rolling Stone recently created a presence, because they realized if we're going to engage a younger audience, we need to go to where that younger audience is. Right. So yes, we know TikTok and we know Instagram, and those are obviously those two, and YouTube they over-index on. But if you're a brand and you've got content, and of course then it comes down to messaging and the type of content, but you at least have to be on the channels where they're consuming the content. If you're on completely different channels, well, they're not even going to see it or hear it. But at least if you can start getting into YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Discord, and others, okay, now you're there. And then it goes to your other point. We've got to create content, though, that's engaging, that they actually will find interesting, that they will even share. And that comes down to, I think, being informed by Gen Z. And I think that's where the think tank comes in again. I really think Gen Z could go into just about any company and say, here's how you should produce this kind of content for a channel like TikTok.
Yeah, I ask my son, I'll say, what are you watching? They live on YouTube. My oldest one, I didn't give social media till he was about 13. He had Instagram first, still has Instagram. It's funny. He doesn't really post, doesn't like posting about himself, but he'll follow, but he follows brands. And sir, I would say, what brands do you follow? And he loves sneakers and he loves sports. It's funny. That's the way he consumes or gets his news, is what's going on Instagram. But YouTube, they're watching everything. They're watching they just watched the Xbox release party, and then they're consuming highlights, or they're watching videos, or they're watching YouTube channels that are telling people, and it's informational, it's entertaining, just like all content. That's what we watch. But some of the things that are just recycled almost, it was the reaction videos, or watching somebody watch something. I'm going, why would you do that? And they would laugh. And I'm going, oh, that was America's funniest home videos from way back when, or, Candid Camera and all these other ones. It's that idea of watching someone else do something. I was like, oh, it's just it's old, but it's new. Yeah. But to your point, he dropped off some of the channels. And he said, I would not be on that one. Or he got off of Snapchat. He goes, it's boring. It wasn't good. Or his friends weren't there. And that's the other thing, is understanding where these pockets of, because you break the Gen Z down even more, like where are the gamers at? Where are the sneakers at? Where are the sports funds at? And then targeting that content, just as you should say, well, older generation might over-index on Facebook and might over-index on, well, I got LinkedIn folks here, or, hey, there's still people watching TV. And so that's fine. Just understand who's watching it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So to your point, and that's why I love, I mentioned I do quantitative every quarter, which is great, but I really love my qualitative, just as you interviewed your sons. It's the same thing, right? And I interviewed ninth graders recently. And it's just interesting, we're on Discord all the time. We're hanging out on Discord. We're connecting with people who love the same video game, the same band, the same this, the same sport. You got to get that through conversations like that, and then all of a sudden, as a marketer, a light bulb goes up. All right. You might say, well, I've never heard of this Discord. So you got to first understand what it is, but how do we authentically have a presence there? Because as you know, and Reddit's been this way for years, you can't just as marketer, bust the door in. Oh, we're on Reddit now. No, that's not what the community is looking for. But I think there are ways that you can have a presence in an authentic, genuine way that they would be receptive to.
Yeah, that's the running joke, is eventually marketers will screw it all up. Marketers will show up and screw up everything after a while. So, but yes, Discord's something that I'm just dipping my toe into, because curious about what it is and what the arena is, just so I can understand it. I was doing some work on TikTok and trying to understand it. It doesn't work for me per se, as an individual, but I need to understand it for my clients to say, here's the type of content you should be creating, or we can create with you to push out there, because that's your market out there. So,
well, especially not to get too deep in your clients, but even categories, right? So even automotive. So in a place like Discord, I like to say it's passion groups. It's people who are connecting over passions. Now, maybe originally it was video games and esports, but I know a band, and this is when I first was introduced to Discord probably 3 years ago, a band that was slowly gaining popularity, and they actually came out of Rutgers, and they said, yeah, we're on Instagram and we're on Twitter and we're on Snapchat, but Discord is where we have the greatest engagement with our fans. It feels like it's a club, a group, and we're all hanging out together. And I've told that to professional sports teams, because based on all my research, including my discussions just over a week ago with a bunch of Gen Zers, they said sports is popular, but no sports team's controlling the conversation. It's just out there. And they agreed with me. They said, yeah, sports teams should actually be on Discord in an official way, contributing to the conversation. But they said, at least as a week ago, they couldn't think of any sports team that had a presence there. And I think that's the same for other brands.
Well, it's just, there's so many of them, and you're trying to master them all. But Discord, from talking to younger folks, or even people, agencies on there, it's back to the days when we had forums, and you had your forum for car enthusiasts, and you had your sports forum, and you get on there, and back in the day you would argue about marketing and SEO and paid, and you'd yell at each other in the forum. But that's what it was, a place that you went to with like-minded people to have discussion. So it's fascinating, but that is the hard thing for businesses. It's a very fractured, back in the day, it was the three big channels, in New Jersey, you had ABC, NBC, CBS, and then you had the smaller local channels, but you could count them on your hand. And then you had radio, and you had a couple, but now it's everything. You still have newspapers, and then you have online, and you have this new one coming up and that new one coming up. And for businesses, sometimes just talking to my fellow marketers, there's more places to go, but it's not as if businesses are investing to generate more staff to handle all of these. It's just lumped on another one. And they're also not hiring some of the Gen Zers or the people who really live in this because, well, they're young, they don't know. And actually, they're the ones that'll help you faster because, to your point, and I love that think tank idea, because even if they don't know how to, they'll tell you what needs to go out.
Correct. That is correct.
That's a fascinating point.
Yeah, I met with a brand last week, and I said this seriously, but it was also a creative idea. I said, if you had the bandwidth, I would hire a CIO, a chief Instagram officer, a CTO, a chief TikTok officer, and I would hire, and I would have them dig deep and go, delve deep into a couple of those key channels. If Gen Z is important. for some brands, as you know as well as I do, Gen Z may not be there yet. They may not be that yet. But if Gen Z's become a priority, I would start with that think tank idea, and then you could always even go further with it.
Well, to your point is, I'll just talk about some of my, automotive dealership clients, some of them is, the top of that funnel is starting to go out and buy, but a lot of them are ride sharing. A lot of them also were Ubering, right? So they didn't need that. Now with the pandemic, people are going, I don't really know if I want to be in someone else's car, but they're looking for the cool brand. They're looking for or the dealership that's helping in the town. They're the ones that are sponsoring this. They're the ones who did this. And I've been for about 3 years, just drilling it into my clients. You need to sell why you do business. You are a local business. You are probably the one who does more in your town, but you just don't tell people because you don't think it's important. You think price is important, and that is, but it isn't to their kids.
That's right.
And the kids can help drive the decision of the parents if they say, no, we need to go buy over here because they help animals. They have an animal adoption every couple Sundays. On Sundays when they're closed, they have adoption services. Or, hey, I saw they did donated to Make-A-Wish, or I saw that they did the food drive. We're going there. So again, it's learning who pulls the strings. And I think they have the kids do have a very big voice in the household. So you're right. They may not be ready to buy yet today, but in a few years they will. So if you've constantly been that image in their head in the town, as you said, you're that business that's giving back and has a good heart, not just a good product. Eventually when they're ready, you're going to be on their consideration.
Yeah, no, you brought up two great points here. And I love that you brought them up. One is influence. Even though the majority of Gen Zers are still in school, right on down to about second or third grade, they have tremendous influence. And that influence, to your point, all types of purchases, from let's go to Wendy's because their social media is cool as opposed to somewhere else,
right,
to other influence. And then the second part, which was perfect, purpose. They are the purpose generation. And they do notice that you supported this high school initiative, this community initiative, this whatever it might be in our community, in our state, in our region.
Right.
That does get noticed. And of course, doing that consistently will get even more notice. And as you said, Gen Zers today will be car buyers tomorrow, will be home purchasers, the next day. So they will evolve into that.
Yeah. And I think as again, my petri dish is my son, but also the class that I just taught, up at Northwood University, and talking with all of them about marketing and what moves the needle. And it was interesting how some of them in in college, we were talking about what platforms they were on. I was surprised how many of them are on Facebook. And they've migrated back, or Twitter. They're like, well, that's where we get our news and that's where it's fast. So, but when I said, okay, well, if a brand was on Twitter, they're going, no, I don't want to see ads on Twitter. I want to see pictures. And so Instagram is more for that. And the face of a brand, as my son follows, basketball, but it's, Jordan started it. That's a Jordan shoe. That's a LeBron shoe. That's a Kyrie Irving shoe. That's a Steph Curry shoe. And then it's also that person's belief. And if they go wrong, then I'm not buying their shoe. And brands need to also have a face, right? Local brands, and the content, to your point, is connecting with them so that they see people. People, they're not connecting with brands, the building. They're connecting with what you do or some person that's representing the brand, which is why that whole generation, they're used to influencers. They're used to seeing people. And so however you can tie into that, I think that's a fascinating, as you said, influence.
Yeah.
How do you find that for your business? Yeah.
And I think what's important, you're absolutely right. I mean, the greatest influence in the lives of Gen Zers are their actually Gen Z friends, the greatest influence, right? So they're friends who they go to school with and do other things. So if their friend, we're both in New Jersey. So if their friend goes to, I'm making this up, but a minor league baseball game, and all of a sudden they're sharing content. Wow, that looks like fun. Dad, can we go to that game? My friend was there. But in today's world, as you know as well as anyone, influencer marketing is more popular than ever. But influencers can go astray just like a celebrity can go astray. And so if that influencer is all of a sudden representing your brand, and now they've done something that isn't exactly seen as positive in the community, that can backfire as well.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's why I think it's important to understand who's the influencer, or have multiple influence. But what I noticed with the fascination that Gen Z has, or this younger group, and I think it's a great lesson when we're marketing to them, is they like to see behind the scenes. We all sort of did, but they love seeing,
they do.
Behind the scenes. And so to your point, where sports teams, walking them behind, going under, here's the locker room, here's how we do it, or that idea of a day in the life. People like seeing that. And so your brand you may not think it fits, but if you find better ways to tell stories about your brand or how your people are working, even if it's employees, then it's, they're people like me. Or to your point is, that's cool, or that's fun, or look what they're doing. I think they've really gotten into stories. They love more than anyone else, just because there's so much content. It's who's captivating them with story, fast, fun, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Right?
That's right. I agree. And I talk about this all the time with brands, from sports brands to main category leading brands. I call it access and experience. And I think two ways that you just talked about it. One is the brand themselves can be creating this behind the scenes access content, right? How the product is made, how this happens, how this takes, all the very cool stuff. But then if you give a Gen Zer that access and that experience, and I always use the example, I don't know why I use this one all the time, but probably because I presented to professional hockey teams 2 years ago. I present to professional hockey teams, I say, show them an image of a Zamboni and say, it cleans the ice. I said, not to a Gen Zer, this is access. You put a Gen Zer in the passenger seat of that Zamboni for the 10 minutes it's going around the ice. By the time they've streamed it, they've shot it, they've sent all over, right? So to your point, it's that access, that experience, that behind the scenes. It's one of the reasons why the NBA to me has done so well. The NBA was really the first sports league where you saw the players arriving at the arena, walking in their pregame wardrobe.
Right.
In the old days, you just saw them come on the court. We didn't see this, park in the park, in the parking lot, walk through the catacombs of the stadium. And the NBA realized, hey, this is access. We're giving our fans access to something that they're not. So yeah, completely agree with you. And
it's real access. I mean, back in the day, you had photo shoots with athletes, or you saw them out at an event and maybe it was a still picture, but it wasn't access of I'm in the locker room, or, now they do it afterwards, a post-game celebration. But like you said, it's the day-to-day of, this is the way LeBron comes in, or this is the way Stephen Curry comes in. Or I think the WNBA is doing a phenomenal job branding their stars. But same thing, you're watching them come in, you're watching them do normal things that we do. And I think that connects them versus making it so far away or so unique that they turn around and go, well, that's not, I don't really that looks cool, but I don't understand it, versus, wait a minute, I have those sneakers, or I want those sneakers, or I saw those sneakers, or look, he has the same headphones I do, in a more day-to-day casual way. I think that's what connects to this generation, because they're constantly surrounded by that on that. So let me ask you, how, as a professor, so you're a professor at Rutgers here, and but how did Gen Z become? I mean, you're the author, I think, six books now.
I think it's somewhere around there, but there's a few on Gen Z for sure. Well, where it really came from is I was in New York City at an agency life for 25, 26, 28 years. And for many of those years, especially in the 2000s, the focus was millennials.
Right.
And it really was. Every time, and you know this better than I, every time you got a brief, you got an RFP, how do we reach these millennials? And it was in 2017 that I was finishing a course, and I think I was driving back home, and then just a light bulb went off. I said, well, millennials may have been the focus and still are the focus. But come 2020, 21, 22, 23, Gen Z will become the focus.
Right.
They're going to have to be, because they're just... And at that point, I just set off on, first thing I did was just gathered any and all research from around the world, every study, every survey, every article. And I just read. Then I set out on interviewing Gen Zers from age 13 to 23. This was in 2017, 18, on just, again, what are you doing on your phone? What social media channels do you prefer? How can marketers engage you? And that just became the process of ongoing research. So like right now, I just fielded a survey of, hopefully it'll be close to 500 Gen Zers, their attitudes towards the Olympic Games this summer. The Olympic Games are, mid-July to early August. Will they even watch? If they watch, and NBC just announced last week the hundreds of thousands of hours they're going to put out on NBC and NBC, every variation of NBC. Are they even going to watch? If they watch, are they just going to get highlights on YouTube and other places? Does the Olympics even have the cachet it did when you and I were younger?
Right.
So I'm really interested to see those results in the next day or two. I'll have them back because that's again, it's these moments in time. When we were in class, and we'll be back there soon again, every day, every morning after the Super Bowl or every morning after the Oscars, I would teach 2, 3, 4 classes. How many actually watched the Super Bowl? And each year that number of hands went down and down and down. And the Oscars, if you were in a class of 35, maybe 2 or 3 actually watched. So media companies need to recognize this. They need to understand this, as do marketers.
Yeah, I agree. My son, big sports fan, very rarely would sit and watch a whole basketball game. Even if it was the finals, he'll watch a little bit of it, come back, maybe pop in, but he was much more about the highlights.
Yes.
Versus that idea of I can watch it, or he would just say, well, they'll be playing it or streaming it later. I can go back and watch it later. But that's the idea of let me zip to the good part, or let me get past the boring part. So that is going to be a very hard thing to engage.
He's the perfect example. Time is very valuable to them, right? And so it's a lot about being efficient with your time, and sitting and watching a 3-hour game to them, I hate to say this, it's a waste of time, right? I'm saying, like, if I can get those highlights, if I can tune in even a minute after the game and I can kind of catch up, that's good enough for me. I don't need to sit there for 3 hours and watch it, which is why we do see a decrease in TV ratings and other things. So this is something that I've had a lot of discussions with leagues and teams and regional sports cable networks. They're all dealing with right now. They're all dealing with that.
Yeah, it's very hard. You have to just either accept the fact that it's going to be narrowed down and then pivot and market the highlights, market the streaming of it to figure that out. But the day I can't even do that. I used to like watching, but the thought of sitting down, even sometimes watching a movie, the thought of going 2 hours, I just can't, or it has to be a special time where I'm just going to block this off.
Sure.
I'm going to watch this for this amount of time. But it's fascinating watching right in front of me this consumption of information, let alone the devices, because this idea of them using a computer, no, a laptop, do I have to? I mean, even their iPads, they've moved from iPads. And I said, well, why don't you watch it on an iPad? And they go, no, I'd rather watch my phone.
Yeah.
Because it's easier for them to carry. It's always in their hands. I can get whatever answer. So even the devices now, and thinking that through for brands, for, even the platforms of saying, well, it's no longer on an iPad, so I can't design it, or I can't design my website for a desktop because nobody's on desktop. We know that this group is even more mobile.
That's right.
And I'm saying even more beyond even the iPad, where we were all, iPads are great. They're going, why would you even carry that? That's big and clunky. Just, you don't even, and we're celebrating. I don't have to bring my laptop anymore. I can bring an iPad. And they're going, ew, like that's horrible.
You raise a good point. And when I talk to marketers, now again, not every category, but definitely fast food, definitely other categories. If you can get real estate on that phone, and that's why we've seen, and you know this as well as I do, so many campaigns lately, especially during the pandemic, where a brand like, I'll just throw out a brand, Chipotle, they're offering something special, but the only way you can get it is you first have to download the app.
Yep.
Well, think about that. Once that app is downloaded, that's on that individual's phone. That means they're one step closer to being able to hit that app when they want food. So that's great real estate. That's prime real estate. So as a brand, if I can make my way onto their phone, wow, now I'm there. Now I need to give them more incentive to come back to that app, but at least I'm there. I'm at least in their real estate, so to speak. I'm in their, I'm in their yard, and that's powerful, powerful stuff. So I'm fascinated in the last year or two when I see promotions, and the promotion ultimately, they're offering something unique, different, but ultimately the promotion is really about download the app to get this, because that's the longer term opportunity.
And there's some, and I have this discussion with brands as well. There's certain companies that no one's going to have your app. If it's a purchase that's every 3 years or every year, there's no reason to have that have it on there. It's travel apps, it's food apps, it's user apps. And every once in a while, I'm sure there's apps on your phone. There are on mine. I downloaded them with all good intent, and I'm going, dump it, clean it up, get rid of it, cull the herd on my phone, because to your point, Chipotle's on there because they want it, so that's on theirs, but it's my app, so they can order whatever when they need it. But you're right. That is the next hurdle of real estate, is how do I get on the phone? How do I stay on your phone? It's not even get on your phone, because I can get on for one time. How do I stay on your phone and I become sticky and usable? And that's why there are some brands where, the social media apps are there because I'm using it, but it's purchase apps. But most people have Amazon on their phone because it's something I use all the time, or travel app if we're traveling, hotel apps, airline apps. These are all the, user-friendly ones. But to your point is, I need to get on there because that's where they're living. At the end of the day, they're on that phone, and that's their connection to the world, their friends, to information, to entertainment. It's just an extension of their hand. And I don't get frustrated. There's people who get frustrated when they're always on their phone. I'm like, but that's where they're communicating. How many people I watch people eating in restaurants, they don't have their phones up and they're not talking to each other in animated conversation. So what's the point? Now, there are times where I'm saying, put that down. I don't want you becoming addicted to it, because there is that. But this idea of that's where we do our research now. We all do it. I have a question. Let me go find the answer for it. It's speed of information, speed of entertainment, speed of what I need, and brands need to understand. It's just going to I don't know if it's going to get faster, but there's just going to be more places. It's going to continue to be more fractured, and you have to understand where their eyeballs are at and what stops them. As the woman who runs our day-to-day of the agency used to always say, what is going to be thumb stopping? What's going to make you stop that scroll to go, ooh, what's that? And then get them down that rabbit hole, and they go, oh, I like it. And then they come back. So I think a lot of the old marketing is still marketing. It's just we're in different places. So anyway, I could be talking about that. I'm going to talk with you about this onward. So as we wrap up, there's a couple things that we do in every episode. We just take a break, and then we ask a few random rapid fire questions that are off topic, just to understand a little bit more about you. So then don't overthink these. We got about 6 or 7 of them. So are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. What is one thing in your possession that you cannot live without? Can't say your phone, because that's an easy one. What's one thing that you have that you just say, I can't do without?
Probably just my running shoes. I'm an avid. I've got to break away from the office, from the phone. I do my best creative thinking, my best business issue solving when I'm on the road, and I'm running and I'm cycling. So every day it's either I'm on a long run or a long bike ride, and I come back with so many different ideas.
What brand of running shoes?
Brooks.
I do too. I like Brooks. I like Brooks too. I have a little bit of flat feet, so I have Brooks. I'm actually searching for my next pair. I have to go get I can't remember if it's Adrenaline or which.
I just got them. Yeah, I'm the same way.
Adrenaline 21s. I got to do this. What's one thing that you do every day to start your day on the right foot?
I don't want to call it a news junkie, but I seek information. So the first thing I do at about 5 a.m. is I go through all my ad age, my ad weeks, all my newsletters, everything real quickly, just to be informed what's happened in the past 24 hours, what campaigns are gaining traction, what are people talking about. And again, a lot of that, I'm looking with a lens of Gen Z, but I'm also looking at just a broader marketing advertising lens. So every morning without fail, it's the first stop I make is basically sitting in my office for about an hour, just scrolling through everything.
Okay. What makes you laugh? Like real belly laugh, ha ha ha. What makes
Oh boy, that's a great question. That's a great question. That's I don't know, because I haven't, we were just talking about this other day. I'm a big fan of like 80s movies. I just watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High like 2 days ago during the rain. But 80s movies with John Candy and Steve Martell, and I can't find those movies anymore. I mean, I can't find like the equivalent today. I used to, not that I would belly laugh, but those were fun,
those were fun, right?
Get away from, I think a great comedian, like a really just great comedian, not a raunchy comedian, just a great comedian talking about kind of everyday things that we all know, but we've never looked at it, I guess kind of like a Jerry Seinfeld. So always in the mood for one of those.
All right. What is a guilty pleasure food for you?
I'm a big dessert guy. It doesn't matter how healthy I eat, how much I run, how much I bike, how much I swim. I almost daily have to go with, whether it's chocolate chip cookies, ice cream, or something.
Gotta have the sweet.
As long as I can, but by about 7, 8, 9 o'clock, I have to have something. So today I've been great, and by tonight I will have to have something.
There you go. All right. What's a movie or a show that you stop and watch when you run across it on TV?
My favorite show right now, and why can't I think of the title on it, on Apple or Amazon, Ted Lasso. My favorite show. It is to me, it's the best show or best series on television. It comes back, I think, July 26th for season 2.
It was great.
It's my favorite.
Great.
I think just everything about it, the message, the theme, everything about it that's refreshing to me. And again, that's not belly laughing, although there are some.
Yeah, but it's incredibly enjoyable.
It feels great. Yeah.
Right. Favorite cartoon as a child?
Oh, I don't know, Flintstones probably.
Okay. What's a skill or something that you do that people don't know that you do?
I'm not a builder of things. I live on the water, so I'm a big boater. I'm out on the water constantly. So I'm always boating in some form or fashion, whether on my boat, paddleboard, kayak, canoe. So I'm this time of year, especially through October, you'll find me on the water.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We got 2 more. One is your closest circle of friends. What's the one word they would use to describe you?
Probably caring, meaning
go.
always looking to help. How can I help? How can I help you, your children, your friends? What can I do? All
right. Now, so we talked about a lot, and this phenomenal information is such a pleasure getting to know you and chatting with you. Someone who listened to this whole episode, what's the one thing that you would hope they take away from this?
I mean, Generation Z, as I like to say, will transform the world over the next decade. They're going to transform the way employers hire, the way they recruit, the way they retain. They're going to change the way marketers market and advertise. They're going to change, as I like to say, coming out of 2020, they are already inspiring and influencing companies to demonstrate purpose. And they're going to continue that. So I'm very bullish on this generation. Maybe I'll be proved wrong in 10, 12 years, but I do believe they're going to change for the good and transform for the good in many aspects of the world, society, and business.
Well, I hope you're right too. I think so. There was so much that I took away from here as well. And I agree with you. I think that the one thing I took away is, again, don't make the mistake of lumping everyone together, but also understanding when you have these employees there, leverage their knowledge. They understand what they're consuming in terms of content, but also understand they're looking for guidance. They're looking for mentorship, and we often forget it's hard to figure it out on our own. So don't do that, especially them, because they'll drift to somewhere else until they find it, and you could lose some really good employees. So again, thank you so much. So tell the audience, how can they find your TED Talk? They should listen to that, but just your books, where can they find you, website, et cetera? What's the easiest way to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. We all know Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and just type in Mark Beal, B-E-A-L, you'll find my books on Generation Z. You'll find a book on career and transition, which I wrote for people in their 30s, 40s, 50s who are in a career transition. And then my website, markbealspeaks.com. it's really become kind of my place for my speeches, my media interviews. I just launched a new YouTube series called Gen Z from A to Z, which is on YouTube. And like a Gen Zer, I'm just trying to use all these different channels and see what works. YouTube was an idea going into this year that I just wanted to explore a new channel, and it's been a great experience. I've got about 10 episodes up there already, and we'll continue to do that this year.
Yeah, I like them. I watched a couple. I like the conversations that you're having. So well done. So again, Mark, thank you so much for being here. So again, please connect, go watch this. If you have any questions about Gen Z, this is the expert. He knows what he's talking about here. So again, thank you so much. If you've been watching all the way through, again, don't forget to subscribe. If you've been listening, again, wherever on your favorite place to download podcasts, again, subscribe. So this way we release episodes twice a week on this to help you maximize your potential, take charge of different aspects in your life. For this, taking charge of how you're going to go market to Gen Z, more importantly, how are you going to attract them, especially if you're responsible for running a business. You're going to employ these folks. You got to understand what makes them tick. Don't forget to put your comments in. Thank you so much. Please share this out. Great information. And as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge. But now Mark's given you a few more tools to help you become more successful and take charge of your life. Thank you so much for your attention. I look forward to seeing you next time.